Hello everyone, welcome back. For those that are new here, my name is Maxwell. I am an associate level therapist in California. I've worked with the homeless population, eating disorders, foster children, and this channel is all about working through the anxiety you might have in the kitchen. In today's video, we're going to look at different ways to look at a recipe because I think a lot of times we can look at a recipe and we get overwhelmed by it so much because it looks wonderful, but we are afraid that we won't be able to prepare it so well. We get scared by the list of ingredients. But it really is just the list of ingredients and the set of skills that require to combine those ingredients together to make the dish. So I'm going to present to you 5 dishes and the main skills that go involved to making those dishes, things that you can practice at home to develop those skills. And then for the record, this video is not going to have a list of ingredients to use and then a step-by-step process because that's, again, not the point of this video. You can go on YouTube and find thousands of fantastic recipes probably for each one of these dishes. So I encourage you to go out there, find one that you like, and practice the skills talked about here. The first dish is not really a dish, but it's more of a side, but it's still a wonderful thing to make: guacamole. And the reason that I've chosen this is because one of the main skills that you get to work on are your knife skills. And the knife skills are important here because you're going to realize the very first time that you make this, the size that you dice all of the ingredients is going to be the size of the final dish. And if you chop it too big, you're going to realize the mouthfeel of it is not going to be right. It's not going to be the same consistency of your favorite restaurant that you go to. So you're going to be forced to chop the vegetables much smaller next time. And that itself takes practice and a little bit of time. The second thing, and this is the thing that I hate about every single guacamole recipe that I find, is that they tell you always 6 avocados, 7, 8 avocados, but each avocado is a different size. And inside each avocado is a different amount of that avocado meat. So I do things by weight. And I realize when you weigh out each ingredient for every recipe that I make, the dishes come out much more consistent each and every time. So I invested in a wonderful little scale. It measures in grams, it measures in ounces and pounds. You can find these really inexpensive on Amazon. I've had this one for about 8-9 years now, and it's done wonders for me and my consistency in the kitchen. This second dish was one I was actually not going to put in this video, but as of last night, I decided to put into it because of a mistake that I made, and that is fajitas. Now, I had never made fajitas before, but I decided to give it a try last night, and I'm glad I did because I realized, again, knife skills are very important. When you make the fajitas, you have to chop up those peppers, and the thinner those peppers that you have, the nicer mouthfeel that you have, and the softer that they turn when you are cooking it in the pan. And then while you're cooking those peppers and the onions in the pan, you're going to realize that not only are you watching for how soft they get in the pan, but you're going to notice when the smell changes. And that's a really important tool for noticing when a dish is reaching a certain point in the cooking process, using your sense of smell. You're going to realize the aromatics are much more pleasant, so make sure to pay attention to the smell when you're making this dish. And finally, this is where the biggest mistake that I made, and I knew that I shouldn't have made this mistake, but I wasn't thinking clearly, is that I overcrowded the pan with all of the meat that I have. Not only did I cut the meat too thick, I think, but when you overcrowd a pan, especially when you're using meat, what happens is as the meat heats up, water gets released from the meat. And when there's too much water in the pan, instead of the meat frying, it's getting boiled because it's just in this pool of water. So instead of crowding the pan, it's got to have enough space to only release a little bit of water because you only have a little bit of meat in the pan, but there's enough surface area then for that to evaporate from the pan. So if you got a lot of meat, don't crowd the pan, do it in batches if you don't have a big enough pan, or get 2 pans and do it at the same time. This third one, you're going to love, and it's going to be pretty inexpensive for you to just go out and buy the ingredients and practice this over and over and over again. And this is grilled cheese. And the great thing about this recipe and the challenging thing about it is getting the grilled cheese right, because you have to not only fry it on the pan, but you have to do it at the right temperature because you don't want to burn the outside and you still want to get that cheese melted on the inside. You don't want to get the outside just right, but still have the cheese not melted on the inside. Because in cooking, there's actually 3 types of heat transfer that happen. And when you're cooking a grilled cheese, you're using conduction. That is from a surface to a surface, from the pan to the bread itself. So learning to control that temperature while you're making that grilled cheese. And if you screw it up the first time, that's totally fine because you could get a loaf of bread and you could get a stack of cheese, make one sandwich, and if you screw it up, just throw it away, make another one right away. And you could just keep doing this over and over again, and you learn through practice what the right temperature is and how long it takes to heat up a pan with your typical oven or the oven that you have at home. The fourth recipe on here is chili. Now, in my personal view, a great chili recipe is going to have a lot of ingredients on it. And because of that, the important skills in here is planning, shopping management, and a lot of time management too, because you have to organize the list. You have to take that list, figure out if you've got those ingredients at home, and then go out, shop, budget for it, because if you're trying to budget meals for the week, you got to figure out how much this is going to cost per meal and if that's going to be within your budget. And if it is, then fantastic. You got a crap ton of ingredients at home, and then you got to organize those ingredients into one pot. And again, with this too is the knife skills, because if you're chopping the peppers, if you're chopping, the onions and the garlic and whatever, you get to practice those knife skills more and more. And finally, along with the time management piece, I like to throw this in a slow cooker. So if you find a great recipe, you could just probably throw it into a slow cooker. Do it in the morning, do it before you go to work, but in 8 hours later, you're gonna have a wonderful dish to have during any of the cold season weather that you have. And the fifth and final dish is one of my all-time favorites to make at home, just a good old classic steak and potatoes. And the wonderful thing about this recipe to use for practice is that if you're making steak, and any other side for that matter, it could be potatoes, it could be vegetables, you have to time it so that they both get done at the same time. So I know when I make mashed potatoes at home, I know how long it takes for the potatoes to boil. I know how long it takes to mash the potatoes and add the cream and the butter into it before it gets ready. So I use that to go backwards, because I know when I cook my meat, I have to preheat the pan for 3 minutes. I cook the meat for 3 minutes on one side, flip it over, cook it for another 3 minutes, and then I stick it into the oven for 10 minutes at a slow 250 degrees Fahrenheit. And you're going to notice that when I do that, I'm using two different types of heat transfer. Not only am I using the conduction, the meat on the frying pan, but then I'm sticking the pan in the oven, which is convection heat. And that's heat that gets transferred through. It could be air, it could be oil, or what have you. A common and very popular way to cook meat is that you get that nice crust on the outside of the meat, and then you cook the rest of the meat to the desired doneness that you want. And if you do it right and you practice enough, it's a fantastic meal that costs you $8-9 at home that could cost you $40 for a night out. So for whatever recipe that you want to try, I urge you to view it from that different angle at the skills that are involved for making that recipe, and see if you got the level of the skill to pull it off. And if you don't, give it a shot anyways to practice that skill. And in time, over and over, you're going to get better and better at it, and the quality of your food is going to go up, and it's going to be more consistent. But I appreciate you for watching. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time, guys.